Hey everybody, welcome to the weekly brief preview episode number 1. I was going to wait and I'm still going to wait for the official launch of the weekly brief, but so much is happening, so much is going on in the news that I thought, hey, what the heck? Let's do preview episodes until we get it set up just how we want it, get the guests, get the talent lined up that we want, and then we'll officially launch. But until then, I was so anxious, I just had to talk to y'all. Today, I want to talk about Zelensky and the Trump JD Vance blow up in the Oval Office. I think it's something quite historic in the sense that we've never really seen that type of interaction between world leaders publicly like that. Diplomacy, as it's so called, it often takes place behind a closed door, and then they come out for a nice official press conference, and everyone, there may be tensions that are sensed or words that are shared or back and forth that's shared publicly before or after. But typically the nitty gritty, the brass tacks, the hardcore stuff that we saw in the Oval Office this past week occurs behind closed doors. President Trump asserting that he wanted it to happen that way and he allowed it to happen that way for the public to see it. He wanted the public to see it. I think it's a very interesting, very powerful exchange and a very historic exchange. So I want to talk about that, outline that, break that down, give that context. But before I get there, I want to talk about a little bit about what the weekly brief is. If you follow me or pay attention to me, or if you are subscribed to my Substack, which I suggest that you do, go to Shakur, Jay Shakur, like Tupac, jshakur.substack, SUBSTACK stack.com, jshakur.substack.com, and subscribe. It's free. Go subscribe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're watching the video YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast on any podcasting platform. Subscribe. But if you're not subscribed already, I'm going to give you a bit of a primer, a bit of a brief. So, as you all know, I've on and off hosted and will continue to host my podcast, Jay Shakur Uncensored. That will be my long form conversations with those people or with people I find interesting, that I find relevant to whatever's happening in the world or to topics that I find interesting. I appreciate you all following that. Since college, I have hosted a podcast in some form. And so thank y'all for paying attention, for watching, if you have since my college days. Jay Shakur will continue to be a platform for me, and will continue to be Jay Shakur Uncensored will continue to be the podcast in which I host long form. The name, the mission is in the name, uncensored conversations with any and everyone and everybody. So that is that. I've been blessed. I've been lucky. I have a day job. Even though I'm a reporter by day, quote unquote, for a corporate separate outlet, and this is not this work that I'm putting in is not commissioned by them. So I want that to be clear. But many of you know I have a day job as a TV journalist and a reporter, and I love my job. I'm currently based in Cincinnati, Ohio. I love what I do. I love the work that I do. I love the community stories that I get to tell here at Cincinnati. It's something that I truly, genuinely love to do. However, again, this work and what I'm doing here with the weekly briefing with Jay Shakur Uncensored is not commissioned, is not a part of that. This is a completely separate thing outside of that. I want that to be extremely clear. But also, I've been fortunate enough to have an audience, really, or people who watch my work, follow my work specifically all across the country and in other parts of the world, to be honest. It's not huge. One day it may be a huge audience, but it's not huge. I'm not trying to make it more than it's not. I have a few people and they follow my work. And so I wanted to give them more content because they follow me, particularly what I do, and not necessarily the outlet that I work for. So I want to give them more content separate from that, hence Jay Shakur Uncensored. And now the weekly brief. I will moderate this show, the idea of this particular podcast and show, and we will do cross episodes with Jay Shakur Uncensored. There'll be cross postings and all of that. And it'll all be housed right now on Jay Shakur IRL YouTube channel. But the point of the weekly brief is really to talk about the top main stories of that particular week, give you context, hear from reporters, hear from commentators on both sides of an issue. If we talk about an issue that has multiple sides, and to really talk about what you need to know about what happened in the news that week, hence the name, The Weekly Brief. I will moderate it. I'm simply here to tell you the facts as we know them and allow you to make up your own mind about them. I'm not here to give up an opinion. I'm not here to tell you what to think about a particular topic or issue or whatever we talk about. I'm here to tell you what happened, what we truly know. There's so many voices out there on the internet. The internet is in a way like the Wild Wild West, and I think it should be. I think that was the purpose of the internet, to be quote unquote the Wild Wild West of opinion and commentary and thought and perspective. And my job with, or my goal with this, with the Weekly Brief, and really with Shakur, with all of it, is to bring to you, to bring to y'all the top news stories of the week, and also the underreported news stories of a particular week, or underreported news story in general, so that you have the best information and you know the facts. And the key tagline here is not just the news you know, but the news you need to know. And then also a key thing that I'll always tell you to do your own research. That's it. Do your own research. Again, I'm here to just give you, and I want to give you just the facts of what we know about a particular story. And that's what I'm going to do today when it comes to the Zelensky, Trump, Vance blow up, if you want to characterize it as that, in the Oval Office. There's getting a lot of talk, a lot of chatter, as many people thought a deal was on the horizon. So again, that's the purpose of the Weekly Brief, to really focus in on week of news. The news cycle changes. It used to be you have a news cycle and it goes for weeks, and now it's a matter of hours. We're on to the next thing, right? You're lucky if something stays in the news multiple days at this point in time, and how we consume our news and how the news moves so quickly and so fast. It truly is a 24-hour, 7-day week news cycle. So the Weekly Brief will try to consolidate some of the most important things that you need to know in that particular week, giving you perspectives and also sharing underreported stories. Let's get into this Zelensky, Trump, Vance Oval Office meeting that devolved into a bit of a shouting match, right? I want to give context to that because there are a lot of people that will see clips from this side sharing it with their opinion on it, and they'll see clips from this side with their opinion, with them sharing it with their opinion on that side, and that's all fine and dandy. That's all good, but it was a 40-odd minute Oval Office meeting, right? And there were probably conversations before the actual Oval Office meeting with the press. We don't know. And there have been conversations for years at this point. But in the particular case, it was a 40-minute ordeal. And you can't really get a good sense of it without it being broken down, at least as much as possible. And again, do your own research. I encourage y'all to go watch, if you all are interested, go watch the full 40-minute clip, the full 40-minute Oval Office meeting, and not just the little seconds that have been, clipped for social media. We live in this area of clip it and post it, which I don't think is always good. So please, again, go watch the full 40 minutes in your own leisure. We will go through some of that. But I want to give context to the Oval Office meeting and what was supposed to happen there, why it was happening, and all that stuff. So obviously, we all know Putin invaded Ukraine 3 years ago at this point, I believe. And from there, it's been back and forth. And from there, the United States and European countries and others have decided to back Ukraine in fighting Putin. Ukraine in of itself really cannot sustain and fight a war successfully because they don't have the resources. So we provide a lot of money and weapons to do that. And so the numbers have been disputed, but some say 100 billion, 150 billion, some say 350 billion. Trump is sticking with, he claims, $350 billion. And so he's sticking with that number. That's the number he uses. Others say 150 billion. Regardless, I think we all can agree the United States taxpayer has given Ukraine hundreds of billions of dollars to fight the war against Russia. Let's get a little bit of context, and Zelensky will go into this a little bit too in the overall Oval Office conversation. But let's give a bit more context. So they're fighting this war. Obviously, Trump was elected in November of 2024. And his big thing, a big campaign promise of his, and also a foreign policy approach of his, is that he claims he wants as less war as possible, right? He wants what he deems in terms peace through strength. And so he campaigned on ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. And so there was talks about it. He wanted to do it sooner. He said he made promises that were a bit, hyperbole, that he would get it done within 24 hours of being elected. Obviously, that didn't happen. That hasn't happened. But he's trying to, and his administration is working to garner some type of peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. And so part of that is the United States, or the position of the president of the United States, Donald Trump, currently feeling that, hey, we gave y'all hundreds of billions of dollars to fight against Russia, and we want some of that back. We want some type of retribution, if maybe that's not the right word, some type of repayment or something. And so they came up, whoever idea it was, we don't know the origin of the idea, but the administration has came up with this idea holistically and has stood by it, and hence why Zelensky was here in the United States to sign this deal. A rare earth minerals deal. It's good. Rare earth minerals are good for industry. We use them in chips, and chips go inside our cars. They go inside our phones. We use chips. They make our economy run. They make modern industry run. And so if you're looking at it from the United States standpoint, we gave hundreds of billions of dollars. We want our investment to matter. We want our investment to mean something. We want our investment to we want to return on our investment, if you will, or the money we given to Ukraine. Maybe investment is not the right term. If we want a return on the money we gave to Ukraine, it's not just us giving them money. Then we need to strike a deal first to do that. And that's what, the Trump administration's position is, that will eventually lead to peace, right? The logic behind it, or some of the logic that the Treasury Secretary and the Secretary of State Marco Rubio and others, and Trump himself and Vice President Vance and all the administration officials have asserted to the public is that, hey, if we get them to sign a rare earth mineral deal where we get access to some of the rare earth minerals that they have in Ukraine, we can, number one, bolster ourselves against China. We, number one, can have a stake, a more of a solid stake in the future of Ukraine. And we will have, in many words, assets in Ukraine that are worth protecting, and that potentially, once we get to peace with Putin, prevent Putin from further encroaching, further assaulting, further attacking Ukraine. Because the U.S. has an interest there, and he will know, although Ukraine is not a part of NATO, and so we're not, through allyship, obligated to defend Ukraine, he will know that because America has a stake economically there, and because of our economy is now a bit intertwined with Ukraine, that Putin probably think twice once we get into this conflict of starting or sparking or engaging in another conflict. So that was the whole impetus of this rare earth minerals deal that you may hear people talking about and citing. And that, again, that's why Putin was here in the United States. All right. So he comes to the Oval Office Friday, February 28th. Different officials have different accounts, but they essentially say that this deal was offered to them weeks before this Oval Office meeting. But President Volodymyr Zelensky, he insisted on coming to the White House and signing it. So he comes to the White House and signs it, right? Or he comes to the White House with the hopes of signing it. Customary, as is always customary, is for presidents and foreign leaders to come. They meet, they have a press conference, a brief press conference, or they sit in the Oval Office. They may not even take questions. They sit in the Oval Office for a photo op or whatever. And then they meet in private, and then they do whatever they need to do. They will and deal, and then they come out and have a press conference, a formal press conference, typically standing, and all that stuff, right? So this was probably the first, the first step in that process of a dignitary to visit, right? And I think two other foreign officials visited, President Macron of France and the Prime Minister of the UK came this week too. So it's the formality thing, right? But it didn't stay formal too long, right? It was about a good 35 minutes of formality, and then the fireworks that have flooded social media began. And I want to look at that. I want to dissect that and give you the context of I gave the background of the conversation and what led up to that moment. I want to now give you all the context of that conversation, right? It was a 40-minute, I want to get this right exactly. It was a 49-minute and 25, at least what we have online, conversation, almost 50-minute conversation in the Oval Office, right? That kind of devolved into what we all have seen clipped all over the internet. So let's watch the beginning of it together.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. And we've been working very hard, very close. So we've actually known each other for a long time. We've been dealing with each other for a long time and very well. We had a little negotiation spat, but that worked out great. I think for both countries, I think for the world, actually, beyond both countries. And we have something.
So Trump says we had a little negotiation spat. That is the sometimes the saber rattling and the name calling and the back and forth that leaders do. Trump called Zelenskyy a dictator, asserted that he needs to be replaced, removed, or hold elections. A lot of back and forth. Zelenskyy pushed back against the administration. So that's the public spat, if you will, that Trump is referencing here, or how he characterizes it. And now they're officially meeting to sign this deal, which, again, the Trump administration views this. Hear me. The Trump administration views this particular deal. They view this particular deal, or the signing of this particular deal, this rare earth minerals deal, as a beginning step, right, to, number one, intertwining a bit more of the United States' interest in Ukraine, and then hopefully getting to some type of peace, right? And you're going to see here, at least the Trump administration or Trump's thinking in terms of the next step after signing this, or what he was hoping for, right? Zelenskyy isn't going to go for it, or at least has pushback.
That is a very fair deal. And we look forward to getting in and digging and working and getting some of the rare earth. But it means we're going to be inside, and it's a big commitment from the United States, and we appreciate working with you very much. And we will continue to do that. We have had some very good discussions with Russia. I spoke with President Putin, and we're going to try and bring this to a close. It's something that you want and that he wants. We have to negotiate a deal, but we've started the confines of a deal, and I think something can happen. The big thing is the number of.
As a project manager, I've got 100.
Alrighty. So we see there. It starts off very cordial. Starts off very, normal, right? It goes. It starts off fairly normal. There doesn't seem to be any, or at least it starts off normal and direct. Let's say that it starts off very cordial and direct, right? And let's get into from there. They talk. Zelenskyy gives his words, and then from there, after Zelenskyy gives his words, then President Trump obviously talks and gives his words and his view. From there, they begin taking questions from the press, and I want to go to about the 38-minute mark.
Right. When I was a kid, I looked at the United States not only as a most powerful country, richest country in the world, the country that has great music, great movies, great muscle cars, but also as a force for good. And now I'm talking with my friends in Poland, and they are worried that you align yourself too much with Putin. What's your message for them?
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" It doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America. And for the good of the world, I'm aligned with the world. And I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred.
So he's asked from some outlet that he's asked. It appears, Mr. Trump, that you align yourself too much with Putin, right? That's a belief that people have, right? Trump saying, "Hey, I trying to make a deal to stop the war. I got to talk to both sides." Essentially, is what Trump is saying in this context, in this instance. And so after that question asked by a reporter, Trump answers, and I'll let him finish his answer.
And I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough, but you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy.
So Trump answers this question. Vice President Vance answers the question, essentially says, we believe that the previous administration under Joe Biden talked tough to Putin and he still invaded. And we're trying to engage in diplomacy, i.e. talk to both sides. And so he answers that. I want to go back just a tid here. And I want, after he answers, this is when Zelensky wants to respond. And he really asserts or asks as a question of the vice president. And that's when it gets or goes, quote unquote, off the rails.
Pumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 is
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. That people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversations, my bilateral conversations.
So here, he essentially President Zelensky, is saying, hey, looking at history of how Putin has acted, he took Crimea, which is a portion of Ukraine. He took the Donbass, which is another portion of Ukraine, right? He took land under Obama. He took land under Biden. He has not particularly engaged or honored, in Zelensky's view, ceasefires. And he essentially asks, what makes you think is going to work this time? This is where I think, or this is where it appears to be the misunderstanding, and where Zelensky, who was supposed to show up, signed this rare earth minerals deal, which the United States wanted as a beginning step to then begin to help negotiate peace between Ukraine and Russia. He then talks about ceasefires and the history that Putin has had, in his belief, of dishonoring those ceasefires, right? And taking land and continuing to take portions of Ukraine. And this, and how he communicates it, obviously pisses off the vice president and the president. Let's listen.
During the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and it happens to be right about
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you.
So in this exchange, he's going back and forth, and he essentially saying, he essentially says, "You talking about a ceasefire? Putin's history of ceasefires ain't been good. What makes you think it's going to work this time? Diplomacy. What makes you think it's going to work this time?" To Vice President Vance and to President Trump, it appears that question, or the line of question from Zelensky, signals that he doesn't want peace, but he came to sign a deal they thought that will begin or be the first step or step in the process to get peace, or to start negotiations or continue the negotiations for peace with Russia and Ukraine. So it's this back and forth. It's this back and forth, right? It's this back and forth. 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 And Trump says directly, "You don't have any leverage here." Trump says, "You don't have the cards. You don't have the cards. We have the cards. We have the power. We're giving you the money to fight this war." And at one point, they go to say, and Trump directly says to him, "Had we not given you money, this war would have been over in a matter of days. Had we not supported you," in saying essentially Russia would have defeated you had we not backed you. We backed you, and now we want you to sign this deal to begin the process of peace. And Zelensky is saying, "Hey, I want peace." At least he says he wants peace, but I'm not signing anything, or in the sense, I'm not going to do a ceasefire with Putin or talk or engage in that, because I don't think he's going to essentially be truthful. I think they're talking about two different things. It appears they're talking about two different things. It appears the American government said, "Hey, we're going to do this ceasefire. We're going to do this rare earth minerals deal. And then we're going to get into other conversation about ceasefires and peace and how the peace process will look. But we need, or we want, number one, a bit of payback for the money we've given you." At least that seems to be the Trump administration's position. But also, if we sign on to this deal with you, this gives you our backing, right? This gives you our backing, is what appears to be being said. And so obviously the deal goes off, the deal is done, and it devolves into them talking over each other, all of that. And nothing signed. And Trump says nothing was signed because if we sign this deal with Ukraine, we're now intertwined economically with Ukraine. Therefore, if he doesn't want peace, why would we intertwine ourselves further with Ukraine? That's essentially what he's saying. Zelensky's saying, "I want security guarantees. I don't want a ceasefire." So it appears that the next step in this whole process appears, and we don't know what the behind the scenes conversations were that led up to this moment, but it appears that the next step in this process was a ceasefire after this rare earth mineral deal, some type of ceasefire, at least so that the fighting can stop momentarily, and then they can bring people to the table, and then they have a final deal to end the war finally. But this was the first step or condition that the U.S. had before even getting to that process. And it appears Zelensky is at that step, or focused on that step in this public meeting. And Vice President Vance at one point says, and I believe we played it, or I believe we will, he says at one point, "Let's not litigate this in front of the public." That part we're not going to litigate in front of the public. And the big trope that's come out of this is he was just here to sign a piece of paper. He was just here to sign a piece of paper. So that happens. And let's watch a bit of how the rest of this ends here.
The
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers. Listen,
Please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a
But I
ceasefire.
said to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire
guarantees.
because you get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That
It
wasn't
doesn't
with
matter for
me.
you what.
That
what
wasn't
is
with me.
made. It
That was
wasn't
with
you.
a guy named Biden who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact,
So it appears that Trump sees this rare earth minerals deal as a security guarantee because it's intertwining the United States more into the economy of Ukraine, and therefore gives us an interest in making sure that Putin does not further assault the country. But for President Zelensky, he doesn't necessarily view this rare earth minerals deal as in itself a security guarantee, or at least he wants, as he says there, further security guarantees. Very, very interesting moment there. Very, very interesting moment there. That I think no one expected, obviously. No one thought would happen. And no one really saw coming. It was shocking. Now, this is Zelensky after he had an interview commitment with Brett Baer of Fox News, and this is the interview after that. We're going to look into this a little bit in terms of Zelensky's response. The big thing that came out of the Oval Office meeting was that, hey, bruh, you disrespected the President of the United States and the country. You weren't, quote unquote, grateful enough. And you're asking now, apparently it appears, you're asking now for more when we came here to sign this rare earth minerals deal to begin, at the very least, a process for ceasefire, maybe more in the future. Let's listen to this.
Welcome back to Special Report, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Mr. President, thank you for the time today, especially on this day, to continue to do this interview. President Trump said after your meeting that you disrespected him and the vice president and all of America in the Oval Office. Do you think you did? And do you think you owe an apology to President Trump?
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the invitation for this dialogue, and good evening to all your country, to all Americans. I'm very thankful to Americans for all your support. You did a lot. I'm thankful to President Trump and to Congress bipartisan support. And I was always very thankful from all our people. You helped us a lot from the very beginning during 3 years of full-scale invasion. You helped us to survive. Anyway, we are strategic partners. And even in such tough dialogue, and I think we have to be very honest and we have to be very direct to understand each other, because it's very, for us, very necessary to President Trump. And I'm with all respect that he wants to finish this war, but nobody wants to finish more than we, because we in Ukraine, we are in this war, we are in this battle, a battle for freedom, for our lives. So I'm just telling that I think that we have to be on the same side, and I hope that the president on our side together with us, and that is very important to stop Putin. And I heard from President Trump a lot of times that he will stop the war, and I hope he will, and we need to pressure him with Europe, with all the partners. And I think this dialogue had to be a little bit earlier to understand where we are. Like, I don't remember exactly, but like President Reagan said, that peace is not just an absent the war. Yes, we're speaking about just and lasting peace, about freedom, about justice, about human rights. And that's why I said that I think so, that ceasefire, and Putin, he broken 25 times ceasefire during all these years, 10
Right.
years.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
Now, I respect President and I respect American people.
I think that's key there. I think it's key there to hear his thinking there. It appears the United States is only focused on this rare earth minerals deal with potential ceasefire as a stopgap measure after this rare earth minerals deal. Then eventually, hopefully, obviously, complete, fully peace, end of the war. But he's saying, on that note, on peace, I don't necessarily want that. And so the Trump administration's position is, if you don't want peace, we're not going to intertwine our economies even further with you if you don't want peace after this deal is signed. And Brett Baer asked him directly, the administration wants an apology. A lot of people feel that you should apologize. Are you going to apologize? And throughout the interview 3 times, I believe about 3 times, and I suggest you all again watch this full interview as well, Brett Baer asked President Zelensky if he feels he owes the president and the country an apology. He says, I'm thankful for what you all have done, but he doesn't necessarily actually apologize. Let's go to the end here. I want to go to the end here of this interview. I think the end of this interview is very interesting here. I think this is a key point here for us.
This thing, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Do you think your relationship with Donald Trump, President Trump, after today, can be salvaged?
Can be. Yes, of course, because it's relations more than 2 presidents. It's the historical relations, strong relations between our people. And that's why I always began with to thank your people, from our people. And this is the most important. And of course, thankful to President and of course to Congress, but first of all to your people. Your people help to save our people. People, the first. Human rights, the first. This is very, very important. And we are thankful and sorry for this. I mean, we wanted very much to have only strong relations, and I'm very calm that we will have it.
Mr. President, we're honored that you kept this interview.
So it appears there that he says, in a way, sorry. And from there, he's asked the question, really, of what's next. We thought that this was probably be the beginning of some type of process to get to peace. This war has been going on for 3 years. Thousands of people died and have died and are dying. And we will have some type of working relationship with President Trump. You're going to have to, essentially. But do you think you can save it? He says, I think it's bigger than that, but I think we will get together for the sake of saving our country. And I think that's the big question now. What's next? We don't know. Let's just be frank. We don't know. We don't know what Trump officials in the mood would be in the directives that President Trump will give his team. We don't know what Ukraine and how Ukraine will respond. We don't know. But I think there's something we do know in terms of what's next. And what's next, or in terms of where the public opinion is. More Americans favor quick end to the Russia-Ukraine war. More Americans than before. And I think, if anything, if we want to ask the question about what's next, we're going to have to look at this. This is from Gallup. More Americans favor a quick end to Russia-Ukraine war. Republicans back less U.S. support for Ukraine, while Democrats favor at least a continuation of current level of support. And again, this is dated December of last year, 2024. So a couple months ago. Americans are divided evenly over whether the U.S. should continue to help Ukraine win back territory it lost in the war with Russia. Even in a prolonged conflict, 48% or try to reach a quick end to the conflict, even if that means Ukraine does not recover all of its land, 50%. This marks a shift from prior readings when the majority of Americans backed a fight for total victory. So the public sentiment has changed in terms of how we should respond to this war. And the public sentiment has changed about our support for Ukraine. Less than half the country says we feel that we should continue supporting them. More than half the country is now, we want an end to this war. And so the public sentiment there, in terms of this war, is simply leaning in the favor of ending it. But will it get there? Will United States public opinion push leaders to make a deal, to get to a deal, and to come back to the table is the real question. And the honest answer right now is we don't know. Diplomacy can be messy. We saw how messy it can be. We usually don't see how messy it is, and we did see that. But the honest answer is we just don't know. It'll be interesting to watch what happens. President Zelensky left the United States officially now, so it's not like he's going to come back and sign the deal, at least within the next couple of days. He's now in the United Kingdom meeting with the prime minister there. But the answer to what's next is we don't know. And it seems to be the Trump administration's position that they were disrespected. And it seems to be President Zelensky's position that a ceasefire, at least without more security guarantees, other than this mineral deal, is not going to work. And we'll see if one side changes their stance, modifies their stance, or however that will play out. But the answer is we just don't know. Thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for tuning in. I want, again, to encourage y'all to subscribe, like, share, comment. Tell me what y'all think about this developing and ongoing story and about diplomacy. It's calling into question what we have thought diplomacy should be, or how it should look and how it looks, that we saw this in the very, very, very public eye. So we'd love to hear y'all thoughts on this. Again, please tell others about Jay Shakur and what I'm doing and attempting to do. Just going to censor my long-form conversations and the weekly brief where I dive into current events and what's going on around the country in the news and in culture. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see y'all next time.